Thank you very much, Vernon. It's very interesting what you had to say. Clearly, from what you said, there is a number of questions which are immediately sparking to mind, and we shall try to deal with them later on. In the meantime, I would pass over to Mauro again, because there is the last bit in relation to the Allen machinery bit.
We will keep on with the sanctions, and we have now Mr. Andrea Dalle Vedove, that he will speak to us about the insurance impact on the international sanctions imposed against Iran. Mr. Andrea Dalle Vedove is heading aviation and marine of Generali Assicurazioni, one of the largest insurance company in Europe, all classes. And I mean, he's in charge of the aviation department since early 2000. And I mean, since the beginning of this year, he got also the appointment in marine. So we welcome him in our community, and I leave the floor to him for, I mean, an interesting speech.
Thank you very much, Mauro. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have just had a very interesting presentation made by Vernon Sewell on Iran sanctions, an issue that has seen a strong acceleration during 2010, when many institutions and governments have taken formal steps against the threats arising out of a nuclear program carried out by that country. Long and complex preparatory works have brought to law rules issued in order to face that danger. In this activity aimed at prohibiting Iran's access to goods, materials, and technologies which could be used by Iran in order to develop nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction, some restrictions have been imposed also to insurance matters. The law rules have introduced sanctions against insurance companies, limiting their activity and preventing them from providing insurance services in favor of Iranian entities and/or Iranian interests. This presentation is going to analyze the new rules which bind insurance activities, the sanctions imposed on insurance companies, the consequent limitation with specific focus on the marine hull insurance coverage. As already previously discussed, the most important rules prohibiting some types of trade and/or imposing sanctions are those contained in this slide. Useless to analyze them, again, as already treated in the previous presentation. In any case, we will focus on EU and US measures only due to the lack of time. And of course, with specific focus to insurance matters. As far as the EU measures is concerned, we have to highlight again that the Council decisions is addressed directly to the Member States and has a political value and must be followed by an implementing law, EU Council regulation. At the end of August 2010, a proposal for a Council regulation with the same content of a decision has been issued, and up to now the definitive regulations is still pending. The decision establishes, inter alia, that Member States will be prohibiting for selling, transferring, or exporting, directly or indirectly, certain goods and technologies to or for use in Iran or to an Iranian enterprise. It shall be prohibited also the transit of these goods and technologies in the Member State directed to Iran. With reference to insurance limitations, the decision establishes that it shall be prohibited to provide insurance or insurance to Iran or its government and its public bodies, corporations and agencies, and the Iranian enterprise, and/or all the other entities listed in this slide. In this respect, it is important to underline the justification introduced by the proposal of regulation at Article 31 that limits the extent of relevant Iranian subjects, establishing that the prohibition shall not give rise to liability of any kind on entities concerned if they did not know or have no reasonable cause to suspect that their actions would infringe these prohibitions. Talking about the US Act, you should consider that even if the Iran Sanction Act is a US law, it contains an extraterritorial clause and makes it applicable with brackets, as we have just heard from Sewell, to other nations, including Italy. We have to highlight that the legislation establishes that sanctions can be imposed on non-US companies involved in trade business related to refined petroleum products and against non-US companies that provide insurance or reinsurance referred to petroleum traffic to Iran. The legislation establishes also a sanction exemption in case insurers or reinsurers exercise due diligence in establishing and enforcing official policies, procedures and controls to ensure that insurance or reinsurance is not provided to Iran's ability to import refined petroleum products. In view of the above, we can recognize two fundamental limits for insurance companies to operate in the marine hull sector. EU regulation prohibits to provide insurance or reinsurance to Iranian government or Iranian entities. With reference to the marine hull sector, it's clear that the restrictions shall be for sure applicable to insurance hull coverage in favor of Iranian flagships, but also to Iranian interests, including owned ships. But as the regulation applies to any vessel under the jurisdiction of a member state, to any person who is a national of a member state, to any legal person, entity, or body which is incorporated or constituted under the law of a member state or is doing business within the Union, and restrictions are also in place in respect of transport of all goods brought into or leaving EU territory from or to Iran, we have to say that clear insurance limitations are also applicable to any vessel operating in breach of the restrictions imposed by the regulation. US measures impose a sanction also against non-US companies involved in the specific type of business with Iran and against non-US companies that provide insurance or insurance referred to refined petroleum products trafficked toward Iran, unless due diligence is proved. With reference to the marine hull sector, it's clear that it is prohibited to insure a hull when it is used in similar traffics, regardless of country of flag, registry, or ownerships. Let's have now a look to the current position of the European insurance industry vis-à-vis the actual application of the EU Council decision and implementing EU regulation, considering that for the first time, insurance and reinsurance services are specifically targeted. For this reason, the insurance industry, via SEA, the European Insurance and Insurance Federation, has developed a number of proposals to facilitate compliance with the EU sanctions against Iran. No doubt that the European insurance industry supports the objective of EU sanctions against Iran. However, it is essential that the European Commission develop concrete implementation guidance. The absence of such guidance by the European Commission will result in considerable uncertainty for the insurance industry and could result in substantially different interpretation by national authorities. Consequently, several levels of coverage within the European insurance industry could arise, causing unacceptable legal and contractual uncertainty. Such guidance should be at least include adequate due diligence criteria, as the definition of relevant Italian subjects contained in the implementing regulation is wide. It may not be possible to identify a relevant Iranian subject through current business procedures and indeed at all. Clarification is needed in the guidance as to what steps insurance companies should take in order to satisfy the requirement that they did not know or had no reasonable cause to suspect that insurance or insurance was being provided to a relevant Iranian subject. Guidance is required as to what would be considered adequate due diligence based on the assumption that insurance coverage is provided in accordance with applicable laws. Therefore, in case of breach of such laws, coverage would be automatically not in place as a consequence of the provisions contained in Italian civil law. This is a general rule that has been recently reconfirmed in the clause named Sanction Limitation and Exclusion Clause, where, due to the international and global nature of our business, including insurance and reinsurance, reference has been made to the main laws and regulations applicable. We can read it together. The insurer shall be deemed to provide cover, and no insurer shall be liable to pay any claim or provide any benefit hereunder to the extent that the provision of such cover, payment of such claim, or provision of such benefit would expose that insurer to any sanction, prohibition, or restriction under United Nations resolutions or the trade or economic sanctions, laws and regulations of the European Union, United Kingdom, or United States of America. In other words, the basic concept is any law infringement should imply the conclusion the exclusion of insurance coverage as soon as the breach is exposing insurers and reinsurers to sanctions, prohibition, and or restrictions under the applicable laws, regulations, etc. We could also suppose that breaking the law scenario will have repercussions in terms of ISVAP sanctions, the Italian authority regulating insurance companies at the insurance market, as well as the insurance company's general liability. Many thanks for your kind attention.